The deep space was a black ocean, and the ship Odyssey's Call was a small boat on its surface. It was a salvage vessel built for collecting the lost and broken things left behind in the dark. Its job was lonely and quiet. Today, however, was not quiet. Captain Jin sat in his chair on the bridge. He was a calm man with a face that had seen many years. On the main screen in front of him floated a dead ship. It was a large, strange vessel. It did not match any design in their records. Its metal hull was scarred and dark. No lights shone from its windows. It was a ghost. Any signal? Any sign of life? Jin asked, his voice low. His pilot, a young woman named Hana, shook her head. Nothing, Captain. No power readings. No distress call. It's just empty. This was not normal. A ship this size should have a crew. It should have a story. But this ship was a silent mystery. Jin made a decision. Prepare a boarding party. Min will lead. Full environment suits. I want no surprises. On the lower deck, Min heard the order. He was the head of security, a strong man who trusted his eyes and his weapons more than anything else. He gathered his team, 2 guards, Dee and another named June. They checked their suits and their tools. They were not going to a rescue. They were going into a tomb. The small boarding pod attached itself to the derelict ship's airlock. With a hiss, the door opened. The inside was darker than the space outside. Their helmet lights cut through the black, showing a hallway filled with floating dust. The gravity was gone. The air was cold and dead. They moved slowly, their boots magnetizing to the floor. They passed rooms with chairs and tables still bolted down. They passed screens that were forever dark. They found no bodies. They found no signs of a fight. It was as if everyone on the ship had simply vanished. This is wrong, Min said over the radio to the Odyssey's Call. No logs, no emergency pods launched. It's too clean. After an hour of searching, they found the cryo bay. Rows of sleep pods lined the walls. Every single one was dark, its power dead. Everyone except for the last pod in the row. A single small red light blinked on its surface. A low hum of power came from it. Min moved closer. The frost on the small window was thin. He wiped it away. Inside, he saw a man. He looked human. He had black hair and a peaceful face. He seemed to be sleeping. Captain, we have a survivor. One, just one. Back on the Odyssey's Call, the mood changed. They had a purpose now. The medical bay was prepared. The man who their quick scan identified as Lee was carefully brought from the derelict ship onto their own. He was placed on a clean medical bed. He was still unconscious. The ship's doctor, a xenobiologist named Sue, got to work. She was a smart woman with careful hands. Her job was to understand alien life, but today her patient was human. She began her checkup. She scanned his brain activity. It was slow, like in a deep sleep. She scanned his body for injuries or sickness. His vitals are stable but weak, she said to herself. He has been asleep for a very long time. She needed to remove his clothes to check his muscles and attach biosensors. His clothes were a simple gray tunic. She carefully cut it away, and then she stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. The 2 guards, Day and Hana, who were standing by the door, took a step forward. Their eyes were wide. Across the man's chest, from his shoulders down to his stomach, were scars. But they were not normal scars from a knife or a fire. They were strange and complex. They looked like the branches of a tree made of light, or cracks in pottery filled with silver. The patterns were beautiful and terrifying. They seemed to move in the light, but when Sue looked directly at them, they were still. What? What are those? Whispered Hana. Sue did not know. She had never seen anything like it. She reached for her medical scanner to take a closer look. At that moment, the calm voice of the ship's computer, Cal, filled the room. Alert. Unidentified biosignature detected. Source. Medical Bay Subject 1. Initiating deep-level galactic database query. A large holographic screen flickered on in the medbay. It showed a rotating image of Lee's body. The strange scars were highlighted in bright pulsing red. Text began to scroll down the screen faster than Sue could read. Then the screen froze. A new single line of text appeared. The words were written in a deep blood-red color. A loud warning alarm began to blare throughout the entire ship. Sue read the words. Her blood ran cold. Tag World Killer Survivor. Threat Profile Omega. Quarantine mandatory. For a moment, no one in the room moved. The only sound was the screaming alarm. The man on the bed, Lee, was just a man. He looked peaceful. He looked harmless. But the galaxy's own system had just called him something else. It had called him a survivor of the worst thing imaginable, and it had called him the highest possible threat. Captain Jin's voice came over the ship's speaker, sharp and urgent. "Su Min, report to the bridge immediately. We have a problem." Su looked from the scary red words on the screen down to the sleeping man. The marks on his chest seemed to glow with a secret light. She did not know what a world killer was. She did not know how someone survived one. But she knew one thing for sure. Their quiet day was over. Their lives had just changed forever. The screaming alarm stopped, replaced by a deep pulsing hum. Red lights flashed in the corridors of the Odyssey's call. The ship was in lockdown. Inside the medical bay, the air felt thick and heavy. Su stared at the words on the holographic screen. World killer survivor. The red light from the alert painted Lee's peaceful, sleeping face in a bloody color. The guards, Day and Hana, had their weapons out now. They were not pointing them at Lee, but they held them ready. Their eyes were wide with fear and confusion. "Medical bay report." Captain Jin's voice was tight over the comms. Su swallowed, her mouth dry. "Captain, the system, it tagged him. I don't understand. Get out of there now, seal the bay behind you." Jin's order was absolute. Su looked at Lee. He was just a man who needed help, but the fear in the captain's voice was real. She backed away slowly, her medical scanner still in her hand. Day and Hana moved with her. The moment they crossed the doorway, a shimmering blue field of energy snapped into place. It was a quarantine field. Nothing could get in or out. On the bridge, the mood was grim. Jin stood before the main screen, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Min had just arrived, his face hard. On the screen was the face of Admiral Tay, a high-ranking officer from the Galactic Consensus. His image was sharp, his expression severe. "Jin, your report confirms the worst," Admiral Tay said, his voice cold. "You have an Omega-level threat on your ship. The protocol is clear. You must jettison the asset immediately. Then you will initiate a Level 5 decontamination scrub of your entire vessel." Jin felt a cold knot in his stomach. "Admiral, he's a person. He's unconscious. My medic's initial scans showed no pathogens." "Your medic's scans are useless against this," Tay snapped. "A world killer is not a virus you can see under a microscope. It is a concept. A reality devourer. Survivors are not lucky. They are carriers. They are a poison. Where they walk, death follows. That man is not a person anymore. He is a plague vector. Get rid of him." The screen went dark. The orders were clear. Jin turned to Min and Su, who had just entered the bridge. Her face was pale. "You heard him, Captain," Min said. His voice was firm. "The tag exists for a reason. We have our orders. For the safety of the crew, we must remove the threat." "He is not a threat," Su argued, her voice shaking. "He is a patient. I was with him. I scanned him. There is no plague. There is no poison. He is just a man with strange scars. Strange scars that the entire galactic database is terrified of," Min countered, raising his voice. "Do you think they made that tag for fun? Something killed his entire world, Su. Something so bad that just surviving it is considered a crime. We cannot risk it." "Risk what?" "He is sleeping. We don't know what he is." Min shot back. "We don't know what woke up on that bed." Captain Jin listened to them argue. He was a practical man. He trusted the chain of command. But he also trusted his crew. And he saw the certainty in Su's eyes and the fear in Min's. Both were right in their own way. "Su," Jin said, his voice quiet but firm, "I am confining you to the observation deck. You will monitor him. You will run every scan you can think of through the quarantine field. I want proof. I want data. Min, you will prepare the airlock, but you will not jettison him without my direct order. Is that understood?" It was a compromise, a dangerous one. Min nodded stiffly and left the bridge. Su looked at Jin, her eyes full of gratitude and fear, and hurried to the observation deck. For the next day, the ship was a place of tension. Crew members avoided the medical bay corridor. They spoke in whispers. The story of the world killer man spread quickly. Su spent hours in the small observation room that looked into the medical bay through a thick window. Lee lay on the bed, still and quiet. She used the remote scanners to study him. She scanned for radiation, for unknown bacteria, for psychic energy. Every test came back the same. Normal, perfectly strangely normal. The scars were just tissue. They were not active. They were not emitting anything. She read everything she could find about the World Killer tag. The information was scarce and terrifying. It was not one thing. It was a classification for entities or events that could consume an entire world, leaving no life behind. The file spoke of silence and the great hungers. There were no pictures, only warnings. As she read, she watched Lee. He was just a man. He looked kind. On the second night, she was alone in the observation room. The ship was quiet. Most of the crew was asleep. The only light came from the soft glow of her screen and the dim light in the medical bay. She saw him stir. It was a small movement at first. A twitch of his finger. Then his head turned slowly on the pillow. His eyes fluttered open. Sue held her breath. She pressed a button to alert the captain and Min, but she did not speak. She just watched. Lee's eyes were brown and deep. They did not look around in panic. They did not show fear. They were calm but filled with a deep, heavy tiredness. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the blue quarantine field shimmering around him. He showed no surprise, then his gaze shifted. He looked through the observation window. He saw Sue. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The scared doctor and the man tagged as the galaxy's greatest danger. Then Lee's lips moved. His voice was a dry, raspy whisper, but the audio pickups in the room caught it. It was the first thing he had said. The air, he whispered, a faint smile touching his lips. It smells clean. He took a slow, deep breath. Is the song gone? Sue felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. The file she had read used that word, song. It was what the victims heard before the end. Before she could answer, the door to the observation deck slid open. Min stood there, his hand on his weapon. Captain Jin was right behind him. What did he say? Min demanded, his eyes fixed on Lee. Lee looked at them, his expression still peaceful, but his eyes were now sad. He knew what they saw when they looked at him. He had seen it before. Sue turned to them, her heart pounding. He asked if the song was gone. Min's face hardened. See, he knows about it. He's connected to it. But Sue looked from Min's fearful face back to Lee's weary one. She saw a survivor, not a killer. She saw a man who had lost everything, asking if the horror was finally over. The man in the room was a mystery. But he was not a monster. The real monster was the song. And Sue was starting to fear that the galactic consensus had tagged the wrong thing. The silence in the observation room was heavy. Lee's question hung in the air. Is the song gone? Min's hand tightened on his weapon. Captain Jin stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the man behind the glass. Lee slowly pushed himself up to sit on the edge of the medbay bed. He moved with a gentle slowness, showing his hands so they could see he held nothing. He looked at the three of them watching him. His eyes held no anger, only a deep understanding. You're afraid of me, Lee said. His voice was still rough, but clearer now. I understand. The tag tells you to be. The tag exists for a reason, Min said, his voice hard. What are you? Lee looked down at his own hands. My name is Lee. I was a botanist. A gardener. On a world called Haven. He said the name like it was a precious broken thing. Captain Jin stepped forward closer to the glass. What happened to Haven, Lee? Lee's shoulders slumped. The memory was a physical weight on him. It was taken. Not in a war. Not by ships. He struggled to find the words. It started with a silence. A wrong silence. The birds stopped singing. The wind sounded empty. Then people started to hear it. A hum, a vibration in your bones. It was beautiful at first. A song that promised peace. Sue listened, her scientist's mind fighting with a rising dread. This matched the fragmented data in the files. The song, it pulls. Lee continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. It does not break things. It unwinds them. It makes you want to go to it, to join it. People would just walk away from their homes, their families, with a smile on their faces, towards the horizon. They never came back. An atmospheric weapon? A psychic attack? Jin asked. Lee shook his head slowly. It was hunger. A cosmic hunger. The sky had folded. The ground became soft. The world was being consumed, made into nothing, made into silence. Min shifted uncomfortably. And you? How did you survive when no one else did? A pain crossed Lee's face. It was the question he had asked himself 1,000,000 times. I was in the deep gardens, underground, the soil, the rock. It blocked the worst of the song. When I came out, it was over. Everyone was gone. The cities were just Smooth ground. The air was still. The song was leaving, moving on. It had eaten its fill. He looked up, his eyes meeting Sue's. My survival was not brave. It was a mistake. I failed to die with my people. Sue's breath caught. She saw the profound guilt in his eyes. This was not a weapon. This was a man broken by loss. The marks on your chest, Sue said softly. What are they? Lee looked down as if he had forgotten they were there. He touched one of the silvery branching lines. These are not wounds from a fight. There was no fight. When the song pulls at you, it does not tear. It stretches. It pulls reality until it cracks. He looked back at them, his expression utterly serious. These are the cracks. The parts of me that started to unravel but did not break. They are echoes of the song. I am a thing that was pulled apart but did not come completely undone. Min made a sound of disgust. So you are a walking crack in reality? That's even worse. No, Lee said, his voice firm for the first time. I am a reminder, a scar. The body heals a wound to be stronger. These, he gestured to his chest, are my body's healing. They are closed. They are quiet. Captain Jin had been silent, processing everything. The database calls you a world killer survivor. It says you are a carrier, a threat. Lee nodded, accepting the label. To the thing that did this, I am a piece of food it could not swallow. A stone in its meal? It does not like stones. It does not want me. But others? They see the stone and think it is part of the danger. They are afraid of the stone, not of the mouth that eats worlds. The analogy was simple, but it made a terrifying kind of sense. Sue felt a surge of conviction. Captain, he's not the threat. He's evidence of the threat. He's a witness. Just then, the ship's comm system chimed. It was Admiral Tay. His face appeared on a small screen, his expression darker than before. Jin, you have disobeyed a direct order. The asset is still on your ship. My patience is at an end. The cruiser Gauntlet is en route to your position. They will resolve this. Tay out. The screen went black. The message was clear. The Gauntlet was not coming to help. It was coming to destroy Lee and maybe the Odyssey's call if they got in the way. Min turned to Jin. Captain, we have our final warning. We must hand him over before the Gauntlet arrives. It is the only way to save the ship. Jin looked from Min's determined face to Sue's pleading one. He finally looked at Lee. Lee had heard everything. He showed no fear, only a deep, resigned sadness. They are sending the soldiers because of me, Lee said. They are afraid. Fear makes people dangerous. Captain, please, Sue urged. He's a victim, not a weapon. Jettisoning him is murder. Keeping him is mutiny and the death of everyone on this ship, Min countered. Jin was trapped. He had the rules on one side and what felt right on the other. He looked at Lee, a simple gardener who had lived through hell. He made his decision. We do nothing until the Gauntlet arrives, Jin said, his voice heavy with the weight of it. Lee remains in quarantine. No one touches him. That is my order. Min stared at his captain in disbelief. He gave a sharp, angry nod and stormed out of the observation room. Sue felt a wave of relief, but it was small and cold. They had only bought a little time. She turned back to the window. Lee was watching her. He gave her that same small, tired smile. Thank you, he mouthed silently. But Sue could not smile back. She knew the Gauntlet was coming, and she knew that fear was indeed very, very dangerous. The real storm was still on its way. The mood on the Odyssey's call was like a waiting storm. The news of the Gauntlet's approach spread through the crew. People spoke in low voices. They looked at the sealed corridor to the medical bay with nervous eyes. Captain Jin stayed on the bridge, his face a mask of calm, but inside he was fighting a war. He had chosen to protect one man, and in doing so he had put his entire crew in danger. Min was the angriest. He believed in the rules. The rules kept people safe. Now the captain was breaking them for a stranger tagged as the worst kind of threat. He stood in the mess hall drinking bitter coffee, listening to the worried whispers of the crew. He felt his duty pulling him in two directions. Should he follow his captain, or should he follow the orders that were meant to protect all of them? In the observation room, Sue could not leave. She sat watching Lee. He was so calm. He did not pace. He did not try to escape. He just sat on his bed, sometimes looking at his hands, sometimes closing his eyes as if listening to a distant sound. She had to know more. She had to understand. She opened the comm to the medical bay. Lee, she said, her voice soft. He looked up, his eyes finding her through the window. Yes, Doctor? The song you mentioned, Sue began, choosing her words carefully. What does it do exactly? How does it consume a world? Lee's gaze grew distant. He was looking at a memory. It does not attack. It invites. It makes you feel that you are incomplete, and that only by joining the song can you become whole. It is a beautiful lie. Your mind unravels. Your body follows. You become part of the silence. There is no pain. Only a terrible, empty peace. And you resisted it? Sue asked. I did not, Lee said, his voice full of shame. The rock and soil of the deep garden shielded me. I heard it only as a faint whisper. By the time I reached the surface, it was too late. The song was finished. The world was gone. He looked at her, his eyes pleading for her to understand. I am not strong. I am just a man who was in the right place to make a terrible mistake. The mistake of living. Sue felt a deep pity for him. He saw his survival as a failure. Your body, the scars, they changed you. The database would not tag you if you were just a normal survivor. Lee nodded slowly. The song touched me. It tried to pull me apart. But it was leaving, its hunger satisfied. It did not finish the job. My body healed, but it healed around the echo of the song. These marks are that echo. They are a part of me now, a memory my cells will not forget. Suddenly, the ship's pilot, Hannah, spoke over the ship's comm, her voice tight with tension. Captain, the gauntlet has dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They are here. On the bridge, Jin watched the main screen. The gauntlet was a warship, bigger and meaner than the Odyssey's call. It was all sharp angles and gun ports. A communication request flashed on the screen. Jin accepted it. The face of the gauntlet's commander appeared. He was a stern man with a cold gaze. Salvage Vessel Odyssey's call, this is Commander Park of the GCS Gauntlet. You are harboring an Omega-level threat. Prepare to transfer the asset to our custody. Jin took a deep breath. Commander Park, this is Captain Jin. Our medical officer has conducted extensive scans. The individual shows no signs of active contamination. We request more time to— Your requests are denied, Captain. Park interrupted. Your scans are irrelevant. The galactic consensus has deemed all world killer survivors a terminal danger. You will lower your quarantine field and prepare the asset for transfer. That is your final order. The screen went dark. Jin felt a cold sweat on his neck. He had run out of time. Down in the medical bay corridor, Min heard the exchange. He knew Commander Park by reputation. He was a man who followed orders without question. Min made his decision. He drew his weapon and marched towards the observation room. He would do what the captain could not. He would save his crew. At that moment, a low hum started. It was not a sound you heard with your ears, but one you felt in your teeth and in your bones. The lights on the Odyssey's call flickered. A cup of coffee on the bridge rattled on its table. In his medical bay, Lee suddenly stood up. His calm was gone. His face was a mask of fear. He pressed his hands against the quarantine field. No, he whispered. Then he shouted, It's here! It remembers the taste. Sue stared at him. What's here? The song. Lee cried out, his eyes wide. It has found us. It has found me. On the bridge, a warning alarm blared. Hannah looked at her sensors, her face confused. Captain, I'm reading a massive gravitational anomaly. It's forming right between us and the gauntlet. The main screen showed it. Space itself was twisting, folding like paper. The stars in that area winked out, replaced by a deep, empty blackness. The gauntlet hailed them again, but this time it was not Commander Park's calm voice. It was a scream of static and panic. Massive system failure. We are losing power. Structural integrity is— The transmission dissolved into a horrible screech. Everyone on the bridge watched in horror as the gauntlet, the powerful warship, began to crumple. It was not an explosion. It was as if an invisible giant hand was squeezing it. The metal twisted and folded silently against the starry backdrop. The lights on the gauntlet flickered and died. The ship became a dark, broken toy. Then it was gone. One moment it was there, a crushed wreck. The next, the space where it had been was just empty. The stars returned. There was no debris, no sign it had ever existed. The deep, bone-shaking hum grew louder. The lights on the Odyssey's call dipped again, and this time they stayed dim. Lee sank to his knees in the medical bay, clutching his chest. The silvery scars across his skin began to glow with a soft, cold light. It is here, he moaned. And it is hungry. The hum was inside their heads now. It was a low, vibrating pressure that made it hard to think. On the bridge, the main screens flickered, showing static. The lights were a dim, angry red. Captain Jin held onto his chair to steady himself. "Report!" he shouted over the noise that wasn't a noise. Hana's hands flew over her console. "All systems are failing." "It's not an attack, it's a field. It's smothering us. Life support is dropping." Alarms blared through the ship. The crew was panicking. They could feel the silence pressing in, a stillness that wanted to swallow all sound. In the medical bay, Lee was on his knees. The scars on his chest and back shone with a bright silver light. It was not a friendly light. It was a cold, hard glow like moonlight on ice. He was breathing hard, his face tight with pain. "It is the song," he gasped, looking up at Sue through the window. "It is here for me." The other ship was just in the way. Sue stared in horror at the main screen, now showing the empty space where the gauntlet had been. It had been wiped from existence. They were next. She turned and ran from the observation room. She had to get to the bridge. In the corridor, she found Min. He was standing frozen, his weapon hanging loosely at his side. He was looking at the quarantine field, at Lee glowing inside. The fear on his face was absolute. "He's calling it." Min yelled at Sue as she ran past. "He's killing us! No!" Sue shouted back, not stopping. "It's hunting him. We're just in the middle." She burst onto the bridge. The air was cold. Captain Jin looked at her, his face asking the question he couldn't voice. "It's the entity, Captain," Sue said, her words tumbling out. "The world killer. It's found Lee, it's here for him. The gauntlet was just collateral damage. How do we fight it?" Jin asked, his voice strained. "We don't," Sue said, "and we can't. But Lee can." Min had followed her onto the bridge. "What are you talking about?" "He's the reason it's here." "Don't you see?" Sue pleaded, turning to include both men. "The database got it wrong. He's not a carrier. He's a vaccine. His body adapted. The scars, they're a defense. They resonate against the song. The entity can't consume him. That's why he's a survivor. He's indigestible. His presence disrupts its field." The ship shuddered violently. A console sparked and smoke filled the air. The hum grew louder, more demanding. "It's going to crush us like it did the gauntlet," Hana cried out. Lee's voice came over the medical bay comm, weak but clear. "Captain, you must let me out." "No," Min roared. "You'll unleash it on the ship." "It is already here." Lee's voice was desperate. "It does not want to fight. It only wants to feed. I am the one thing it cannot eat. I am a stone. It will not stay where there is a stone it cannot swallow. Let me out. Let me show myself. It will leave." Jin looked around his bridge, at Hana, fighting her failing controls, at his crew, terrified, at Min, who believed in the rules, at Sue, who believed in the man. It was the biggest gamble of his life. "Lower the quarantine field," Jin ordered. "Captain, that is a direct violation of—" Min started. "I gave an order." Jin's voice cut through the hum like a knife. "Lower the field, now." Sue punched the command into her console. The shimmering blue field in the medical bay vanished. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lee walked out of the medical bay and into the corridor. He stood tall. The silver light from his scars was so bright it lit up the hallway. He did not look like a simple gardener anymore. He looked like a warrior from an old story, etched in light. The moment he stepped out, the crushing pressure in the ship lessened. The hum became a distant drone. The lights flickered back to a dim normal. "It's working," Hana whispered, amazed. Lee walked calmly towards the airlock. He moved with a new purpose. Min and Sue followed him, with Jin watching from the bridge. "What are you doing?" Min asked, his weapon still drawn but now pointing at the floor. "I'm giving it a reason to go," Lee said, his voice steady. He reached the airlock and began putting on a simple environment suit. "It can feel me now. It knows I am here, uncontained. It does not like that." He finished sealing his suit. The silvery light shone through the white material. He looked at Sue. "Thank you for your kindness, Doctor. It has been a long time since someone saw me and not the tag." He turned to Min. "You were right to be afraid, but you were afraid of the wrong thing." Lee stepped into the airlock. The inner door closed behind him. Through the small window, they saw him give one last nod. Then the outer door opened and he was blown out into the silent, star-filled space. He floated there, a single glowing figure in the immense dark. The scars on his body blazed like a constellation. He was a beacon, a challenge, and in the void between the stars, the silence began to move. Lee floated in the empty space. He was a single, small point of light against the endless dark. Inside his environment suit, he was calm. The cold of space did not touch him. The fear was gone. This was what he was meant to do. On the bridge of the Odyssey's call, everyone watched the main screen. No one spoke. They saw Lee, his body shining like a star. And they saw the other thing. It was not a ship. It was not a creature they could understand. It was a distortion, a place where the stars behind it bent and twisted as if seen through bad glass. It was a hole in reality. The silence. The hunger. The deep hum returned, but it was different now. It was not attacking the ship. It was focused entirely on the glowing man outside. Lee raised his hands. It was not a gesture of surrender. It was a gesture of showing himself. "I am here," he shouted, though no sound could travel in the vacuum. His thoughts, amplified by the energy in his scars, seemed to ripple outwards. "I am the one you could not take. I am the stone." The distortion pulsed. It seemed to grow larger, swallowing more starlight. It moved towards Lee. On the ship, Sue gasped and grabbed the console. Min stood perfectly still, his hand frozen near his weapon. The entity enveloped Lee. For a terrible moment, his light was gone. He was swallowed by the nothingness. "He's gone," Hana whispered, her voice full of despair. But then, a pinprick of silver light appeared in the heart of the darkness. It grew, it spread like cracks in ice. The silver lines of Lee's scars were burning through the entity itself. The silence began to churn. It was not consuming him. He was causing it pain. The hum became a screech of static in their minds. The distortion writhed, trying to crush the bright, hard thing at its center. But it could not. Lee was unmaking it from the inside. He was a memory of its own failure, and it could not bear his presence. Then, as quickly as it had come, it began to retreat. The distortion folded in on itself. The stars behind it returned to normal. The crushing silence and the terrible hum faded away, leaving only the quiet hum of the ship's systems. The entity was gone. Where it had been, Lee still floated. The bright light of his scars faded, returning to their normal, silvery sheen. He was motionless. "Get him, now!" Captain Jin barked. Sue and Min did not need to be told twice. They rushed to the airlock controls. A few minutes later, a retrieval team brought Lee's suit back inside. They carefully removed his helmet. He was unconscious, but breathing. His face was pale and beaded with sweat, but he was alive. Sue checked his pulse. It was strong and steady. The Odyssey's call was safe. The lights were bright. The air was warm. The crew slowly came out of their panic, talking in relieved, excited voices. A new communication came through. It was Admiral Tay. His face appeared on the screen. He looked different. The cold anger was gone, replaced by a stunned confusion. "Odyssey's call. We just received the data stream from your ship. We saw it. We saw what happened." He paused, struggling to find the words. "The entity and the survivor. Lee, the database. We were wrong." Captain Jin stood tall. "Yes, Admiral. You were. The Galactic Consensus has issued a new tag for Lee, effective immediately." The Admiral looked down at a screen, reading the new order. He is no longer a world killer survivor. He is now a designated guardian. It was a title of honor. A title of protection. A few hours later, Lee woke up in the medical bay. The quarantine field was gone. Sue was there, smiling. Captain Jin and Min stood nearby. "How do you feel?" Sue asked. "Tired," Lee said, his voice soft. "But the song is gone. For now." Min stepped forward. He looked at Lee, and then he did something no one expected. He bowed deeply. "I was wrong," Min said, his voice thick with emotion. "I saw a threat. You are a protector." "I'm sorry." Lee gave a small, kind smile. "You were protecting your crew. There is no shame in that." Captain Jin moved to the foot of the bed. "The galaxy has given you a new name, Lee. Designated Guardian. They understand now what you are." Lee sat up. He looked at the faces around him. For the first time, he did not see fear or pity. He saw respect. He saw comrades. "What happens now?" he asked. "That is up to you," Jin said. "But the Admiralty has offered us a new mission. This entity, this world killer, it is still out there. It will move on to other worlds. Other people. They want this ship and its crew to travel with you, to stand watch, To be a warning, to protect others if we can. Lee looked at Sue, who nodded with excitement. He looked at Min, who stood firm and ready. He looked at Jin, a leader he could trust. He was a gardener. His old world was gone, but a gardener protects life. He could do that here. He could do that with these people. I would be honored, Lee said. And so the salvage vessel Odyssey's call was given a new purpose. It was no longer a collector of lost things. It became a shield. They traveled to the quiet edges of known space, a watchful eye in the dark. Lee was their heart. The gardener who had grown thorns to protect all living things. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a beacon of hope, and if the silence ever fell again, if the song began to call, they would be there. A living reminder that some stones cannot be swallowed.